Dexter Darden has been living out his dream as an actor in hit movie series such as Maze Runner and Joyful Noise, and now he landed a huge role on the reboot of Saved by the Bell on NBC's Peacock. You know, there's always something I've noticed about Dexter when seeing him on and off screens, and it was the sense of positive energy and a huge smile that he always continues to bring with him everywhere he goes. Dexter's joining me right now to discuss just how we too can begin looking at the glass half full and practice taking a breath of fresh air when things get tough. You're today's man of the hour because oftentimes when I've seen you on the big screen and we've seen you off screen doing interviews in the industry, I often look at you and I'm thinking to myself, how does this man stay smiling and optimistic throughout almost every conversation you have? And so I really want to dive deep into your personality, how you've kind of managed your career in such a way of optimism from what we see at least. But nonetheless, thank you for being today's man of the hour. How are you doing, bud?
Oh, well, I mean, after an introduction like that, I'm feeling fantastic. I gotta be honest. Um, I'm honored to be the man of the hour. This is a really cool experience for me, and I'm just really happy to be here. I'm great though. You know, we're in a bit of a weird time in life, but I think we're overcoming it, and we're moving towards greener pastures. So I feel fantastic.
100%. And you and I were
Yeah.
just talking about the idea of optimism to the extent that, you know, we're doing okay, and we're doing okay in the sense that a lot of people aren't right now. But for you,
Mm.
where have you started finding the silver lining maybe, and also a bit of optimism, if you may, during such hard times, especially in the last now, probably 7, 8 months?
Yes, it's like it's almost gonna feel like we're going on a year of
Yeah.
just COVID and quarantine, and then the reignition of the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
Um, I'm feeling optimistic, and the reason I'm feeling optimistic is because um, I don't know if our country was built on principles that I'm 100% proud of,
Hmm.
and I think the era that we live in with people being a little bit more vocal and not being afraid to speak up and share their minds and express their opinions on social media and so forth and so on, I think it's really helping to spark an awakening,
Hmm.
and saying like, oh, this isn't right, that isn't right, that isn't right, so we might need to just burn this whole thing down and just start from the beginning. And not necessarily burn it down in the sense of like writing, but really take a deep look into yourself, into your inner being, and being like, what principles do I believe in and why?
Hmm.
And how can I take that to the next level to help spread knowledge and awareness to other people? And so
Hmm.
I think that's kind of where I'm drawing my optimism from. I'm just really starting to understand my purpose in this whole thing, and that's just education and awareness, and approaching topics from being a Black man,
Hmm.
um, and being able to relate to a lot of the things that people are experiencing when it comes to police brutality and
Hmm.
racial inequality, because of personal experiences or friends' experiences. And so that's kind of helping me just be optimistic that the outcome will be a little bit more brighter than it is right now.
There's also a deeper understanding we all have about ourselves now, don't you think? You
Yeah.
mentioned that this is a good time to check in with yourself and find what your purpose and values are, so then you can then go out to the outer world. And although we're still struggling with this idea that we're trying to be together while having to remain apart, but to your point about social media, there's also a lot there that is helping us in such a way to educate people and, go in the right direction to some extent, but it really starts with you.
Yeah, it starts with the internal. It has to, and I think we're starting to see a lot of that, and we saw a lot of that. I remember after Ahmaud Arbery was murdered, and then not too far after that, it was George Floyd and Breonna
Mm,
Taylor, and like I think at those that movement happened at such a pivotal time, being as though like we were all in quarantine and we were all in lockdown and nobody was seeing anybody unless they were like in your immediate cohort, right? Like you weren't
right.
seeing people. And then all of a sudden, everybody was at home and watching TV and watching the news and waking up and saying, wait a minute, that isn't right.
Mm,
And I want to get out and I want to tell people why I don't think this is right. And so for the first time, and I remember protesting when Trayvon Martin was assassinated, like
mhm,
for the first time, I remember walking down the streets of Hollywood Boulevard, and I was out there with my mask on, gloved up, but I was seeing all different racial, ethnics, backgrounds, from, you know, the Asian population, the African American, the you know, like a wider spectrum of people who really are coming out to unite and say this is not right and we need to stand up. And I think the only reason people can really do that is because they've had a lot of time with themselves.
Yeah.
And quarantine's been beautiful in the sense of like it's been tough, but it's been beautiful because it really makes you isolate who's important in your life and what is important in your life. When you have that alone time forcibly, you know what I mean? A lot of people tend to run from that, but when you're really forced to be in your home, and you're forced to just kind of look in the mirror and say, okay, what am I doing today and why? I think that really helps bring out the best in people, and unfortunately sometimes the worst as well. But I think we're seeing a lot of the best come out from all different age groups, all different ethnicities, and all different backgrounds.
It is such a nice time for that, especially when we anticipated this time to be so bad and negative and not look good for the world. And we are seeing a lot of good light, to your point. There's been a lot of hard days though during this time too, Dex. And so on your hardest days, when you have to look in the mirror and again, we're forced to kind of be alone, like you'd said, and kind of check in with ourselves on the daily, really. Like the days don't even feel like days anymore at this point. I mean, you're looking at Sunday through Saturday does not feel that way. Sunday feels like a Friday. Friday feels like a Tuesday. But
2 o'clock feels like 3 o'clock.
Right. It does. And it's a snowball effect from there. And it goes back to what you said earlier, that we're going to look at this and be like, dang, it's already been a year. But all things considered, at least for you, on your hardest days during this time, what's kind of kept you up and going, besides the fact that we do have Saved by the Bell we'll get to. I can't wait to talk about it. But at least
Saved by it.
Yeah. And so at least on the hardest days, what's been keeping you going now?
You know, a lot. So communication. And I think like the thing that's been getting me through the hardest days is not being afraid to tell people I'm having a hard day, which is hard. And especially like growing up where I grew up, being a Black male, growing up in not necessarily the most like affluent area, we're not really trained to talk about our emotions and our feelings and talk about how we're feeling. It's just not in our DNA. Protect and serve. That's it, right? Like provide, protect, and serve. And so like, I think in my recent coming into adulthood and I'm starting to feel really comfortable just having conversations, talking to people like you or my friends and being like, yo, this is why I'm having a rough day. And writing as well. Like I'm a singer songwriter, but I've also started writing poetry and just expressing my thoughts through different outlets. And not being afraid to do so. But you know, like that doesn't mean days don't get tough. Like days get tough. And like it gets really bad. Like even 2 days ago when I was watching the news and trying to figure out who the president of the United States was going to be, and I was starting to dive into a really dark place. And so I had to then remove myself from that, turn off my television, put on my music, pour up a glass of wine or a glass of whiskey, and just be like, you know what? That's that. Like, I'm gonna let God handle that, or I'm gonna let somebody else handle that. I'm gonna let the universe handle that. I can only worry about what's best for me and how to protect and provide for myself at the moment. So, conversations though.
Yeah, conversations truly, especially with people that we find most significant to us right now, people that we know are important to us. I can't tell you how many people we've called over the last 6, 7, 8 months now who we haven't talked to in years. But how nice is that to get on the phone and catch up and really see how they've been also dealing with this? I'm sure you have international friends as well, but this is a worldwide pandemics. We are going through worldwide pandemics right now.
Yeah, this is the first time. I mean, COVID is really the first time that I believe we've all been on lockdown for the same reason in the whole entire world.
Right.
There wasn't a person in the globe, if you really take it like to think about it, there wasn't a person in the globe who wasn't affected by COVID-19. That's crazy. That's crazy. But also because of that, you know, there is a bit like, because everybody was forced to be shut down and was forced to have their eyes on the television when the civil injustice was happening, I think it also sparked an inkling in people to be like, oh, we can actually see it for the first time. Like we had marches happening in Australia for Black Lives Matter in the movement. Like we had marches happening all over the world. I had
Tokyo, Japan, even
Japan.
Right.
Like some of my castmates from Maze Runner were spearheading and white and black were
Yeah.
spearheading movements in London.
Hmm.
So like, I think that because everybody's eyes were on the same, because everybody was dealing with the same situation, it helped normalize the inequality across the globe and help everybody understand like how we're really not that different,
Yeah.
and we're all experiencing the same thing, and there's a way to overcome this. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Together.
together,
Overcome this together.
together.
The
What's just
idea.
tough?
Yeah. So let's talk about the idea of togetherness together.
Mm.
Really, there's,
Okay.
and it goes back to your whole, what I would see as a sacred place of communication during this time when you're connecting with friends, family, loved ones, castmates, whoever those people are. There's a sense of togetherness that kind of allows us to deal with this a little differently, would you assume?
Yeah.
And then how has it helped you, and more importantly, the people around you?
Yeah. Well, technology is great.
Mm.
It's great. Like, we're hosting this interview via Zoom. You know
Zoom.
what I mean? So like, and usually, of course, I wish I could have been in the studio with you and on the podcast and doing the whole thing. But I think that there is a beauty in people adjusting and
Mhm.
making those kind of compromises to be able to do what we still love to do. But yeah, just communication, and it was really hard because this was the longest I ever went without kicking it with my mother, and she's in Jersey
Same.
and I'm out here.
Mm.
And so, we really went through a really tough time because since I've moved to LA, which was almost 8 years ago now, like I've never gone more than 2 or 3 months without seeing my mom.
Seeing your mom, right?
So we went 6 or 7 months, right? Which was really tough. But conversation through FaceTime or through Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to reach out to other people regardless of the time zone, whether it be 3 hours in Jersey or 8 hours in London,
Right.
we still find ways to find a common balance to be able to just have talks with each other and just see where you at. Like, how's your mental? What's good?
That's why I think we would get along, and that's why I thought we would
Yeah,
have gotten along, and that's why we're getting along. You're also a mama's boy.
I'm a mama's
I'm a
boy,
mama's boy. I so
big
am.
time. Yeah,
It
yeah,
goes.
yeah,
I've always thought that when you're grow up as a mama's boy, no matter what your mom is like, you always end up having some type of optimistic, high energy, positive personality. I've learned that from a lot of guys in my life.
Well, that's good. I'm also happy to be considered in that same category.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's for sure. And it might also be like a secret fear because I don't know if my mom is lurking behind a tree with a shoe just in case just in case I get out of line or out of pocket. But
That's what
no,
it is. She's
I love
always
her
watching.
100%. And I just
Right.
feel like she is always watching. But she is definitely my best friend.
Mm.
And we've just been through so much together. My father passed away when I was 8, so
Mm-hmm.
it's just been her and I for the long haul. And it's really nice to have an ace like that in your back pocket when times get rough. So,
Yeah. Well, especially too, you're in one of the toughest business, I would say, and I wanted to
sure.
talk about that with you, especially knowing your mom's support, and I'm sure she's seen the best and the worst of what Hollywood has brought
Yeah,
into Dexter Darden's life, at
yeah,
least. But
yeah.
when be it all of the rejections or the yeses, the nos, the crazy hours that you're having to work as an actor and now a singer
Mm.
songwriter. I mean, you're putting in all this time and effort into what is now your dream come true, into a career. But up until this point, for you at least, what has the pursuit been like, and why has it been so important for you to be an entertainer?
It's been tough, but it's been great. It's been the hustle that I've always that I was trained for and born and bred for. Like when I came out here, when I moved to LA, I didn't have much under my belt. I mean, I had more than the average person, I guess. I had done 2 movies, and I was coming off of some like pretty recent acclaim for my performance in Joyful Noise. But then I got out here thinking that everything was going to happen so quickly, and it just
Mm,
didn't. Right. So then I went back to hosting bar mitzvahs and hosting weddings and living paycheck to paycheck, figuring out how I was going to pay rent or put like,
sure.
am I going to eat today or put gas in my car kind of deal.
Mm,
So but that all just makes the reward so much more worth it. And even when it comes to work, like I approach acting in its own way anyway. Like I think every audition is my job. Every single
yeah.
time I get emailed an audition from my agent or my manager,
Hmm.
that is my job to look at that sides and say, how do I break this down? And then if I get the job, that's the reward,
Hmm.
right? And like because then I get to have conversations like this, and then I get to like do an ad for Saved by the Bell or be in a
Sure.
movie with Usher Raymond and Burden. You know what I mean? Like all
Yeah,
of those
yeah.
kind of little things that are things that you reach for and that you hope for and that you strive for.
Hmm.
Um, it wouldn't, if it wasn't for me doing the job, which was like waking up at 7:30 to get to my 10 a.m. in Santa Monica because I'm going to sit in an hour and a half worth of
I'd
traffic.
say.
That's the job.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of what's made this journey a bit easier. But there was definitely difficult times, and there was times when I needed my mom's help, and
Yeah.
there was times when my mom needed my help. And but that's what we do. We sow the seed and pay it forward.
That's what it is. And you hold on to the people who hold on to you and give back while they're giving to you
Yeah.
and vice versa. I love that. I love, love, love that. Hey everybody, your host Justin Crawford here, and I'm bringing you a proud message from our sponsors at Velement. Velement is a men's hair brand specializing in styling products started by the popular men's grooming YouTube creator Joseph Andrews, aka Velement. I'm excited to share that their latest Discovery Styling Kit is out right now and contains 5 hair styling products, all in a convenient travel size. But let's hear from one of their most satisfied customers right now.
Hi, my name is Hans. So naturally my hair is thick and hard to control. I could never seem to find a styling product that could give me the hold I need to keep my hair in place all day. That's why I use Cavalier Heavy Clay. It's a heavy hold product that gives me the texture and hold I need to keep my hair in place all day. I spend so much time trying to find the right product for my hair.
But with Velement's Discovery Kit, you can now try their full range of styling products before deciding on your favorite.
Find the product for you.
Now, if he didn't convince you to make a purchase of that Discovery Styling Kit, I also want to offer you 10% off with our code REALTALK10 for 10% off at www.bluemon.com. And when you head to checkout, if you want 10% off, just use our code REALTALK10. What do you say about taking the first step for better hair today? Back to the episode we go. But also in the creative, competitive, hard challenge, this industry you're in is quite bonkers if you ask me, who
Yeah.
works in media, which is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Interview, produce the
Yeah,
tape,
yeah.
put it on the platform. But in your world of singing, songwriting, and acting, do you have a routine, as you go through everything, or is every day so different? And if
Every
you
day
have
is so
routine
different.
rituals or what have you,
Every day is so different, especially in this industry. Like in this industry, you'll hear 100 no's before you hear one yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it's like that in anything you do, but this industry is specific because you don't know when your next movie is going to come up. You don't know when your next TV show is going to come up. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to plan your financial stability based around, okay, this is my whole year plan off of just because I've done one movie. I have to budget my life based around this check because I don't know when the next one's coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So routine is important for sure to remain sane. But my routine, even with COVID, is kind of evolved. I haven't, because I didn't really have an opportunity, never in my life since I started acting, where my image didn't matter or what I looked like didn't matter. Was I keeping the baby face and all that kind of stuff? So I enjoyed COVID in terms of I grew a beard for the first time in COVID. Didn't even know I could
We
get one.
saw, yeah.
Yeah, it was out. It was out. It was on.
Movember, isn't
display.
it called Movember, where dudes don't
Yeah.
shave their face?
Yeah, exactly. So but my routine now more so consists of, if I have say I don't have an audition,
Mm-hmm.
I wake up, I pray. I'm a big cook. I love to cook. Cooking is my therapy. So I'll maybe do a nice lunch or whatever, and then just link up with friends, or try to at least, and do my email, check in with my people, and just the routine of what makes your life so simple. Go to my workout, make sure I get something fitness active, and make sure something like that happens. But it's really simple, to be 100% honest, my day by day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I find peace in that. Because the rest of my industry is so chaotic. It's so high, it's so low, it's so this, it's so that.
Yeah.
So just if I can find a way to stay as even keel in my everyday life as possible, that's what keeps me from going crazy in such a crazy industry.
That's so interesting you bring that up. I was having that conversation several times this week about keeping your life simple. I even forwarded a podcast by Dan Churchill, who's a buddy of mine who hosts the Epic Table podcast. And
Okay, great.
he was discussing it. I sent him one about simplifying your life from another friend of mine who hosts Your World Within. And he put out one yesterday that was, it was the idea of simplifying your life. And just those two guys alone, I thought to myself, they're always in plain t-shirts. They always, eat the same things. I've heard from both of them that their lives are so simple. They don't want a plethora of this. They just want enough of that. But that's in both of our industries. We'll talk about that for a sec. I mean, you look at Hollywood and media, our industries cross paths. It's why we have our fantastic publicists and managers and producers on this
shout
call.
out to them.
Shout out to all, that we're all connected somehow. But I think something that really connects us when an actor like yourself and a host like myself start discussing what our lives are like, there's a pretty big depth in the idea that when your life is simple, you can then pursue everything else you want to with your career. But because the career is so demanding and sometimes scary and it produces so many types of opportunities and it gets messy and silly and crazy and fun, everything else about what you wear, what you eat, when you work out, the kind of work. Okay, let's talk about working out for a second. When you go to the gym, Dex, you don't want to think about the workout. So what for you, we can imagine what you're eating, right? Like I'm sure you're eating simple foods, but for Dexter, when you're in the gym, do you ever get worked up with the idea that maybe the workout is too complicated? Like I hate complicated workouts. I'm just getting in there. I'm going to do the same thing and leave it there.
Yeah. So I've been working out in a park, i.e. COVID. I've been working out in a park and I'm really, my routine is really interesting because like, a lot of my body depends on what I'm working on at the moment, right?
Yep.
So like right now in Saved by the Bell, I'm playing youthful and I'm in high school again, and I'm like, it's a different. I need to look differently than I would if I was just going through my everyday life as an adult male.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I do is just to either scale one way towards the performance or scale another way. So like in Maze Runner, in the first one I played Fry Pan and he was the cook and he's been in the Glade for 4 years. So I put on some weight. I was eating, I was enjoying myself in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, not depriving myself of any kind of diet. Yeah. But for the last two, we'd been out in the wilderness for quite some time. So I had like started changing my diet and kind of went more plant-based and started working out a little bit more in a way where, like I can look a little bit more like I've been out in the wilderness for a little bit. So when working out and training, I really just go dependent on the job that I'm doing at that specific moment.
Gosh, I wish my life was that fun. I feel like I have to maintain at the same weight. So I'm never worried about, I mean, not that I'm not worried about it, but I have to go to the gym to stay this thin if I consider myself thin. But for you, it's a challenge to go in and be like, I have to look this way. And then this is what workouts, but that makes life exciting.
Yeah, and I have a trainer who is also one of my best friends. He's a personal trainer, certified, went to school for it, but we used to play basketball together. So he's one of my best friends in the world. And so he's really in tune with the body and knowing how I need to look or how I want to look.
You have to keep those friends around. Nutritionist friends of ours, people who are in the medical field, friends of ours.
Yeah, because then you realize how expensive that starts to be. And you're like, oh, wait a minute.
It starts to be, right? It does.
Like, wait a minute.
That's why they're getting paid the big bucks to do it. But you got friends in the industry. They'll take care of you. They'll let you know what you need to eat. They'll tell you when you're starting to feel bad, who to go see. No, that's so good to hear.
Because one day they're going to need a coaching on that audition tape. And guess who they're going to come to? The guy with the ring light. You know what I'm saying? Because
those same people... Well, if they're so good at what they do, they become experts. And now experts are getting asked to be interviewed and go on to network segments and stuff. So everybody has to be in front of these little things right here with your cameras, And so when they got to come to guys like us eventually, we'll just, it's like, okay, well, remember that time I trained you? Can you teach me how to be interviewed?
Absolutely.
So we'll continue this interview, nonetheless. When I want to go back to what we were talking about, which is this idea of optimism and positive mindset. Given the fact that you've lived an extraordinary life, especially alongside someone like your mom, and then more importantly, doing that in a very tough business like entertainment as an actor and singer-songwriter, for people who are really struggling with that, I've talked to so many people, I've heard from so many people who just don't know how to really build a positive outlook on life, on their life, and how they're pursuing it. what would you tell them? Would you have any tips on maybe how you do it on the daily if you ever are stuck in a rut and you try to find optimism? Any tips there?
Yeah, I mean, I think three things I have like a checklist of three things I want to make sure I do every day.
Yeah.
And the first one is assess the one before you assess the many. So like a lot of times when you look at a situation and you're surveying it and you're looking at, like, for instance, my life, like 2 days ago when I'm watching the news and I'm starting to dip and dive into a place of unhappiness, I got to check myself and say, okay, so that's what the many are doing, but
Mm-hmm.
what's best for me? That's the one. And so I'm assessing myself. I'm assessing myself in the situation to see if there's anything that I can do better. Um, for my mental health. And then in return, I can help, like, give that to others, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Paying it forward really, really, really helps. So every time somebody blesses you in a specific way,
Sure.
if you just really take the time to, like, pay that forward to somebody else and bless them in the same way how we were just talking about training and then helping with an audition or training and how to conduct an interview.
Yeah.
Kind of that same thing. It's a bartering system of just making sure that life is stayed afloat. And it gets hard. It does get hard. Like we talk about, like we were just talking about how hard it gets to really be like, this is a dark time for me.
Mm.
But I think admitting that and understanding that this time is not okay and I need help getting through it is a big part of how you can help, propel yourself to have a more positive outlook on what life is supposed to be. Because you can only control yourself.
Mm.
You can't control anybody else. If you're driving in a car and you're paying attention and a car doesn't stop at a red light and you slam your brakes, you controlled yourself. You did what you were supposed to do. If you get rear-ended, that's not on you. You can't control that car behind you.
Mm-hmm.
It may
Mm-hmm.
suck. The outcome will suck, but can you just say, I made the decision that was safest for me at that moment?
Mm.
You can. So as long as you can really just control and really focus in on what is yourself and like what will help propel you to happiness and just to live a little bit better of a life,
Mm.
you can't really control anything else. Everything else is out of your control. So you can influence it one way or the other, but that's not necessarily going to help your happiness.
Right. Might only give you a headache.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stress people are putting on themselves to control the uncontrollable as well, to your
Yeah.
point, and you can't do that.
Yeah.
You know? Man,
Yeah.
can we talk reboots for a sec? Can we
Yeah.
talk about Saved by the Bell? I would have never thought that show would be rebooted. And then you start thinking about Girl Meets World, Fuller House. I mean,
Right.
come on, we have to relive these shows that helped us grow up. I interviewed, I was going to say Corey Matthews, Miss Matthews from
Oh,
Boy Meets
Topanga?
World. No, sorry. So it's Topanga Corey, but Corey's mom,
Oh.
Betsy Randall.
Oh,
I
wow.
interviewed
Okay.
her, and you know what I told her? I said, I grew up on Boy Meets World, and I'm from Japan. You guys, somehow that show ended up on the Air Force Network in Japan when I was growing up, and I liked Boy Meets World a lot. And she goes, well, I raised you well, didn't I? So there's somewhat of a huge connection between those actors when we were younger and the influence it played on our lives. But now you get to play a role on Saved by the Bell in the reboot to then do that for generations that are now young. And this is a huge franchise with Mario Lopez and everybody else from back then that is now here. But what was the experience like building a reboot, especially since a lot of the cast was back in the show with you guys?
Yeah. So I mean, it was an incredible opportunity just to be able to approach it, and to be a part of it. I remember when I got the audition, and I remember calling my agents and I'm being like, "Yeah, what is this real?" And my manager Matthew, he's so funny. He's like, "Yeah, it's real." And I'm like, "Okay, is this where we feel like going? Like where we're going?" And he's like, "100%, this is where we feel like we're going." Because
Yeah.
honestly, and this is not to be conceited in any way, shape, or form, but I'm big in manifestation.
Yeah.
And like
You
what
gotta
you
own
put
it.
out there in the world is bound to come back to you in one way. Everything is a circular motion. And so I really read the character of Devontae, and for the first time in a long time, maybe ever, I looked at him and I was like, this is the closest to myself that has ever existed on TV. Ever. Like, and truly. And like, in terms of me having the opportunity to play him, but like, you know, Devontae, and not giving too much away about Saved, but and
Yeah.
talking about him, but he's a kid who doesn't come from the Bayside kind of culture, but he goes to Bayside to kind of reinvent himself. And that was the same way when I was growing up. Like, I didn't come from a private school education kind of culture, but my mother made sure to provide that opportunity for me so that I can get the best education possible
Wow.
and make the best of myself. So I was already attracted to the script, but then understanding once I got the role, the lineage in the history that has already been previously established by Elizabeth, by Mario,
Yeah.
by Mark Paul, by Tiffany, by Lark. You know what I mean? Like these characters are and people are. Saved by the Bell was one of the first times we ever really saw diversity on television
Mm-hmm.
in that kind of way. Like, when was the last time you saw a Hispanic dude, a black girl, and a blonde hair, blue eyed kid with a redhead girl and a brunette guy and a skinny little
Right.
scrawny kid all on TV at the same time, each having their own individual storylines. And so that was a big part of that Saturday morning why I like loved watching it growing up on
Mm-hmm.
the reruns and all that kind of stuff. So I think there is a specific challenge when it comes to me playing this kid on Saved by the Bell, because I knew how important that Zach and Kelly were for me, and I know how like
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to model like my relationship and being infatuated with my girlfriend the way that Zach was with Kelly, and
Yeah.
so it's really important too, especially because right now Saved by the Bell is real different. It's real
Mm-hmm.
different right now. We're not in the happy-go-lucky '90s anymore.
I was gonna
We
say.
live in a 2020 society where there's cell phones, there's social media. We don't got the big brick that Zach had. You know, it might make an appearance, but we on iPhones now and Androids. So
Yeah.
having those kind of like dealing with the technology in the high school and hoping to bring that to life, it's really cool to be able to say, I'm playing a character on TV who I would have hoped to be able to watch. Um, and so I'm just hoping that it translates the way that I think it will.
I believe it will too, and I can't wait to tune in.
Well,
I know a
thank you.
lot of people can't wait, at least can't wait to tune in. I was gonna say a lot of people can't tune in. Well, unless you, I mean, you got to find a way to get Peacock nowadays, right? That stuff is free, and that
Yeah.
is not like your normal Netflix and Hulu. I don't
Yeah.
say that. I don't say that because I work at NBC full time. I say that because it's true. When it's free, you better go grab it, and you better grab Saved by the Bell.
And
And so,
everything is better free.
always
100%. I don't know how many times you were at Costco and you were like, that free sample is elite. And you get it back to the crib and
you'd
it's not
always
as
go.
great.
Right.
But but with Saved by the Bell being free, it's going to be fantastic regardless. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Especially now that we have the originals back too, having Mario
Hmm.
back and Elizabeth on every single episode, kind of made the process a lot easier. You
I'd
know,
say.
at first I thought I was going to be a little bit intimidated because I'm like, I'm going to work every single day with the people who made the show the success that it was.
Yeah.
But they flipped the script and they were the total opposite of that. They were
Mm.
welcoming, encouraging, endearing, like it was a really fantastic experience to say, okay, you really are trusting us as the new six kids to help people feel real comfortable at home.
Mm.
And it's really nice to have it's really nice to have that support.
Well, I'm stoked for you, pal. This will be a really good show, series, reboot. I know a lot of
Thank
people
you.
are excited to see it. I have one final question for you. I don't want this interview to end, but every good thing does come to an end. Luckily
For sure.
for us, it's on a positive note here because we will never do that to anybody who comes on the show. The Men of the Hour was built on optimism and positivity, just like the episode we're building together now. And I'm really glad you were a guest on the show. But when you think of one thing, Dex, that you would like to give people as you continue on this journey of building a dream in Hollywood and really making it happen for yourself, and with your proud mama watching you right there, what would you want to say you were able to give people throughout the entirety of your career?
Um, I I really would just like to say I gave a person a smile. And it really meant a lot to me that you picked up on that, because I truly do believe, like, through any artistic endeavor that I pursue,
Mhm.
um, it all needs to make sense in terms of who Dexter Darden is. And when you watch a movie like Burden or Son of the South, and you
Yep.
see that, like, the revolutionary, like, abolitionists wanting to get out there and like help fight the good fight,
Mm.
that's a part of Dexter. But then when you watch a movie like The Binge, or you watch a show like Saved by the Bell,
Right.
and you see him a little bit more giddy and a little bit more happy-go-lucky, and you see him smiling. That's also a very big part of Dexter. And I truly believe I was put on this earth to just make people smile. I was meant to be a dad, meant to be a husband, and I was meant to be like, I was just meant to be make people smile. And so if I can say like I did a good thing, and because it's a natural smile cannot it cannot be replaced. You can fake it, but you can tell when somebody's faking it in the picture.
Right.
But did I bring joy to you today? Did I bring joy to a person today? And if I did that, then I feel like I did a good job for myself. So
that's called a superpower, Dexter, and that's why we are so proud to have had you on the Men of the Hour podcast as today's Man of the Hour. It's something we saw in you on and off screen, and I mentioned it at the top of the show, and look how full circle that came. That's exactly what you are in pursuit of with your career, and it makes you a Man of the Hour. The reason this whole show exists is because there are a lot of guys doing what they do and they love, and we believe that with the mission of driving social impact through your narrative, for instance, a lot of other people now will reconsider putting on a real smile. A lot of people will reconsider what it means to, give while receiving. And then people who only have one parent now will look at this episode and say, dang, I'm not the only one. In addition to everything else we covered. So, a lot was covered here. So I really appreciate you taking the time to get on this little Zoom call, what we have here. But this is how we're doing things now, and I'm
happy.
I'm okay with it.
I'm happy. I'm happy that we did it. I'm so glad that it can happen. And I'm like just grateful to have been in this position with you to be able to have this conversation. And I hope we get the chance to do it again. I hope there's one more hour for Dexter Darden, because I know
in the incoming seasons to come, we're going to leave many hours for Dexter Darden. Thank you so much again, buddy. It was so good to meet you, and we'll be sure to stay in touch.
For sure. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Justin Crawford here, and I'll be back next week with another great guest on the Men of the Hour podcast. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review right here and anywhere else you'd like to listen. Also, check out our Instagram and YouTube channels when you get a chance, and see the full video interviews with our guests at Men of the Hour podcast. Thanks for listening. Now get out there and make a positive change for yourself and those around you.